Millennials. Who the heck are they? What exactly is a millennial? Well, the Pew Research Center strapped on their green eye shades and declared today that henceforth millennials will be defined as people born between 1981 and 1996. So what does that mean? The historical touchstones for millennials then are this: the 9/11 attacks, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the election of America's first African-American president.
Let me just start by asking you, what kinds of things are millennials actually spending their money on?
They're spending money on the same things that most people are. Actually, the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with its survey of consumer finances, and we saw that millennials are spending about 10% of their income on food, just like other generations, about 1% of their income on alcohol, just like other generations, 3% on clothing, just like Gen X. So the pattern is that millennials aren't spending all that differently than other generations
The 1% on alcohol, that's the same for Gen Xers and baby boomers?
It's about the same.
Okay, all right, duly noted. All right, what are credit card companies doing to basically land more millennial customers? Because it seems like there's a real competition to try to get that business.
They absolutely are, yeah. We saw with the Chase Sapphire Reserve, for instance, that
we do have a generation that I think we have raised with a great degree of entitlement, where it's like the world owes me a living. And we picked a perfect example story of a kid that says, I want to be a rock star. I say, kid, he's now 40 years old. I want to be a rock star. And has basically tried to buy fame, has bled his family, his mother and father, for $1.7 million. $1.7 million trying to be a rock star. I mean, he's got the poses, he's got the haircut, he's got everything.
The thought bubble is, what is up with this millennial generation that you guys seem so entitled? What would you say to those critics?
I would say that I'm really not a member of that demographic that they're speaking to, of that group. I'm a very conservative person.
I appreciate you coming on. I truly wish you the best of luck. And
I am a millennial.
Yes.
Some are new to politics completely. They're children of the Great Recession, and they are living in their parents' basement. They feel that they got their education, and the jobs that are available to them are not at all what they envisioned for themselves, and they don't see much of a future. I met with a group of young black millennials today, and one of the young women said, none of us feel like we have the job that we should have gotten out of college. And we don't believe that the job market is going to give us much of a chance. So that is a mindset that is really affecting their politics. And so if you're feeling that you're consigned to, being a barista or, some other job that doesn't pay a lot and doesn't have much of a ladder of opportunity attached to it, then the idea that maybe, just maybe, you could be part of a political revolution is pretty appealing.
But I have to say, I mean, the living in your parents' basement thing sounds like the sort of thing that, older folks say about younger folks when they're trying to basically be like, you don't do anything for what you have. And that's probably the place that she shouldn't have gone. But it does sort of like speak to where they were, 6 months ago when she was trying to convince a lot of Democrats, hey, like, I get why you want this stuff, but it just can't be free.
But it comes at a really difficult time because she is struggling with the millennial vote right now. You see poll after poll showing that a lot of those voters are going to Gary Johnson and not coming to her. These are people who do support Bernie Sanders, and probably the same people that she is putting down there, saying that they're living in her parents' basement. So even if it's a snippet of it, it gives exactly the ammunition that the Trump campaign needs.
This idea that she's saying this to her friends behind closed doors, to donors, just like Basket of Deplorables. Like, she's putting one face forward to Bernie Sanders supporters saying, please come vote for me. And then behind closed doors being like, look at these kids.
The younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break. No. I have no empathy for it. Give me a break.
Whenever I'm out with my millennial friends, chasing the Pokemon or getting our nipples pierced, shaving our pubes, or arranging action figures while sending out dick pics, when the talk turns to the election, I hear some version of, they're both bad, or they deserve each other, or there's an election?
What do you think of millennials? Coddled, entitled?
Yes, I think so.
Really?
I do. That is my experience with many of them. I mean, perhaps a present company excluded from that. But I think that there is. You know, we love to hate on them, and it's become a pastime. You know, there's dinner time conversations about how much we despise millennials. There's lengthy articles written about this now. It's almost like they're the kid that we want to pick on the schoolyard for a whole host of reasons. I would only say to many of them, get over it and move on and toughen up. And don't run to your safe space every time someone says something you disagree with. I do find it frustrating, though, when the first question they ask me is, what is my work-life balance? And I think that there has to be a degree by which you have to earn your place before you get entitled to all of your entitlements.
But there is research that shows, for example, after about the 42-hour mark, for every 7 hours of productivity you put in, you only get 1 in return. So maybe they're actually just recognizing the fact that working like a dog doesn't actually have more of a payoff.
So maybe they're smarter than the rest of us. Maybe they're the kid that we want to pick on the schoolyard for a whole host of reasons.
Right? The Occupy Wall Street movement was all disenchanted college kids who got out after that lesbian dance theory major and thought they were going to make 6 figures somewhere. And it turns out nobody pays to watch people theorize about lesbian dance. So, you know, so they end up, you know, going and living in tents in Central Park and pooping on themselves.
The title of your piece, I'm a millennial and my generation sucks, it just talks about how the millennials don't get off the couch very often.
They don't. It's actually, I wrote another piece for the Post not long ago about millennials being the shut-in generation. I interviewed several who will spend whole weekends at home very proudly just binge watching Orange is the New Black.
Or doing a Snapchat.
Or doing a Snapchat.
A sad face.
Of themselves binge watching.
Right. Johnny, when you walked in here, we all said, what's everyone saying? All your colleagues, what are they saying? And we want to read some tweets and then get your response, because this is from Paul. He says, it's just so obvious you live in a bubble of New York City white millennial privilege.
A new report shows out of 2,000 millennials surveyed, 41% of them spent more money on coffee than investing in their retirement. Financial advisors say it doesn't take a lot to save a lot for the future.
Putting that into a 401k or putting it into a Roth IRA where you invest the money and you know, over a period of, you know, 30 or 40 years, making 5 or 6%, you know, that amount of money can grow.
We asked some coffee drinkers how much they spend on their cup of joe.
$10 a week.
$10? That's not bad. Was that 2 cups of coffee a week? Maybe?
Yeah, probably.
Companies are hiring experts to teach them about young people. These self-proclaimed millennial experts are on the rise. Last year, U.S. organizations reportedly spent between $60 and $70 million on so-called generational consulting.
It's too controversial, but it is what it is. About 80 million of us. What we believe is happening is the generation is actually splitting. It's breaking in two, and you're ending up with 2 different trajectories. Hang with me. So there's one part of the generation doing everything we're supposed to. There's another part of the generation that's not creating what we call real-world traction. Watch carefully. So as the generation splits, for some reason, we don't know why yet, around the age of 30, you self-select into one part of the generation or the other, and you can no longer relate to the other part of your own generation. It finally explains how we're a millennial, but we don't like the millennial name because our pants aren't falling off. Right?
I mean, there's a video that's going around the internet getting all sorts of play about income inequality. Income inequality is the stupidest issue. Income inequality means nothing. Right? I mean, I have a lot of income inequality with Bill Gates, but I'm doing pretty well, and I don't care that Bill Gates is doing really well. The only thing we should all care about is that there are poor people. We should figure out how poor people can do better, not how to make Bill Gates less rich. But this video is going around and saying, here's a poll of what Americans think the wealth distribution should look like, and here is what the wealth distribution actually looks like. And I watched this video in bewilderment, and young people love it. And I watched this video in bewilderment saying, who told you that you get to tell the universe how wealth is distributed?